Welcome back, guys. So let's jump right in here with the latest announcement for Xbox Game Pass games. This is a smaller announcement with only 4 games that have been announced. And we pretty much already knew these were coming, or at least 2 of them were coming, which is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which the reviews have come out, and it's pretty mixed across the board. Definitely one that I think if you're interested in the horror genre, or you're interested in multiplayer games, probably will want to go and check out. It's gotten some 9s, it's gotten some 6s, and everything in between as well. And that game currently is going to be coming on August 18th for cloud, console, and PC. And it is a day 1 game. Now, they also announced Firewatch, which is coming August 17th to cloud, console, and PC. It's a single player, first person narrative game. I played through this game when it first came out. It's an awesome game if you just looking for an experience more so than anything. There's not really too many huge gameplay elements to it, but if you're looking for a sit down experience that isn't too long and you just kind of want to relax and take in with the storytelling and the atmosphere, definitely go ahead and check out Firewatch. I don't think you will be disappointed. Then we have a big one here that a lot of people, including myself, are very excited for. The question here is, when am I going to have the time to play it, especially with Starfield coming out? But that is Sea of Stars, and that is for cloud, console, and PC, coming out on August 29th. That is also a day 1 game. The interesting thing here about Sea of Stars, we knew this was coming over to Xbox Game Pass, and then after that announcement, we heard it was also coming to PS Plus. So I think this is the first game that is getting launched into the 2 main big subscription services day 1, and we'll see what that does, where people play more of it, all of that type of stuff. And then there is Gris here, which is coming September 5th to cloud, console, and PC. Don't know too much about this one, but it says Gris is a hopeful young girl lost in her own world, dealing with painful experience in her life. Her journey through sorrow is manifested in her dress, which grants new abilities to better navigate her fated realities. So there it is, just 4 games, and I think out of those 4 games, 2 that I'm interested in checking out: Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as well as Sea of Stars. Now, when it comes to games that launched into Xbox Game Pass, this one I'm actually pretty excited for. This one came this month as well, and that was Everspace 2, which is like your ship building space RPG style of game, and it looks like it will be a ton of fun. I've never played it. I believe it was out earlier on PC, and then it launched into Xbox Game Pass and console. But we got an interesting article here from Xbox Wire detailing the kind of process and how Game Pass has helped this game. So first of all, Rockfish are the developers behind this game, and they spoke here to the CEO of Rockfish, Michael Shade, to discuss the game, everything that's going into it, the world, all that type of stuff, but also talking about kind of the Game Pass side of things. And we'll talk about that part because I find that part the most interesting about this. Everything else I'm going to be able to explore and stuff when I play the game. But he talks about how the game is very complex, very ambitious, with lots of stuff to do. He says here, he notes that ongoing appetite for high-end complex space sims, and points out that it's an extremely ambitious genre and the list of features is demanding, especially from a smaller studio, and that they tried to put everything they could in there, but obviously there's not every possible thing that everybody wanted is going to be within this game. And he says there are so many constraints you have to keep in mind, especially on the technical side of things. I don't want to say it's impossible, but in games that are handcrafted, it takes so much development time and resources to make it happen, which makes sense. It's definitely depending on the scope and the size of the game itself. With space, you can handcraft tons and tons of planets, but then obviously it's going to take more time, more resources, more effort. Kind of think about with Starfield, there are tons of handcrafted stuff, handcrafted planets in that game. Obviously, it's from a much bigger studio, but then to get the 1,000 planets in Starfield, they did have to do the procedural generation for a lot of the world. But he continues on here. It says, I understand from a user's point of view that it would be great to have it all. So this is why we made some deliberate choices to focus the gameplay on what happens on the planets and in orbits. And then he talks here about Xbox Game Pass and how Game Pass actually allowed this game to have more development time to bring out a better game, a more polished game, and have more features within it. It says the choice to hone in on specific elements does not mean Everspace 2 was compromised in any way. Quite the opposite. The success of the original Everspace plus a partnership with ID at Xbox meant the game had access to more time and resources than might otherwise have been possible. The Rockfish team was even able to add one additional year to their development plans thanks to working with Xbox and launching on Game Pass. A specific quote says, ironically, not only is it good for Xbox and PC users, it's also good for players on other platforms. Everyone gets a better game because of Xbox Game Pass. The extra funding helps us stay independent, and we can deliver the game when we think it's ready, and it is. First of all, there's always that debate that people have as to whether Xbox Game Pass is hurting the gaming industry. Is it reducing the quality of video games? And I would say as of right now, the answer to that is no. We are seeing lots of high quality games drop into the service. I mean, we're going to talk about Starfield again, but Starfield is coming out in less than a month. That is going to be a huge game, one of the biggest RPGs probably ever to be released. So that type of stuff, I think, shows that there are massive, big AAA, high quality games that drop into Xbox Game Pass all the time. Now, the other thing here to take away from this is that this is quite clear that the extra funding that Game Pass gives to these smaller studios, these ones that work and are in the ID at Xbox program, and then drop their games into Game Pass day one. I'm sure there's some extra deal there to get the game into the service. Obviously, we are seeing now from Everspace 2, at least, that it is helping make these games higher quality, giving them more time for development. And it's encouraging these developers to stay independent. So we're all always talking about this consolidation stuff where Xbox is going in and buying up everything. I mean, maybe they will go and buy Rockfish at a future date, but he says it clearly here that it's helping them stay independent and it's helping them make their game higher quality by giving extra years of development. So I think all of that stuff is very, very good. I think it's very positive for the gaming industry. And I think the ID at Xbox program, from everything that we see, how they promote it, the games that they show off, the fact that they allow a lot of these games to get traction by going into Game Pass and getting exposure for a lot of people who have maybe never heard of these games, is all very positive. In my opinion, I think independent games in general are great. There are so many good ones and they're very creative. And you can see there's kind of sometimes more heart, a lot of the times more heart in indie games than in some of these big AAA games. So I think this is a great article where we learn a little bit more as to what the Xbox and Microsoft money does to help out these indie developers, especially the ones that are dropping into Xbox Game Pass. Now let's jump over here. Let's talk a little bit about Gamescom. Gamescom is at the end of this month. It's always a decent show, whether there's new stuff announced or not. You get in-depth looks at games that we know that are coming out, games that people are excited for. And Jeff Keighley has his games night live thing, his show, his opening night live that he is doing this year. And this is generally where we get announcements and new announcements, but he's kind of downplaying all of this year. He says here, speaking to VGC ahead of the August 22nd event, Jeff Keighley here says it's going to be an exciting show with new looks at many announced upcoming games like Alan Wake 2 and Black Myth Wukong. This year's ONL is less about announcing brand new projects and more about giving fans updates on some of the biggest games due out over the next year. So if you're going into Gamescom opening night live expecting there to be these just massive world premieres of games that we don't know are coming out yet, I wouldn't go into it looking at that. I mean, I'm excited to see more of Alan Wake 2. I'm excited to see Black Myth Wukong and whatever games that have been announced for 2023 and 2024, if they are more in depth with gameplay and all that type of stuff. That has me excited. Where I will be disappointed, however, is if they just show some like more CGI trailers for these games, don't really give us a look at what we can truly expect via gameplay and what we will feel like when we get our hands on them themselves. If it's just more like hyping up a CGI and then he throws in a bunch of ads there and everything, and it's just a money grabbing show, that will be very, very disappointed. But if they get more in depth about games that have been announced, that's fine, because there are so many games coming out in before the end of 2023 that I would love to see more about. And then going into 2024, it's going to be another jam-packed year, it does seem like. So we know Xbox is going to be at the show. We know what they are going to have on tap and some of the games that people are going to be able to actually get their hands on. Soccer 2 is one of those, which I'm really excited to see what the reaction is. Now, in terms of a confirmed list of games that are going to be there, besides the already mentioned Alan Wake 2 and Black Myth Wukong, Mortal Kombat 1 will be there, which that game looks incredible. I can't wait to play that one. I'm going to definitely be playing some of that in between Starfield and Forza and all the other stuff coming out in October. And that was a main game that they did show off at Summer Games Fest. So obviously WB and NetherRealm are working with Jeff Keighley here to lead up to the release of this game with the marketing and the showcase and all that type of stuff. And then Forza Solus will also be there. And then at Gamescom, there will also be Starfield, 4A games, Forza Motorsport, Soccer 2 that's playable, and then much, much more. So it's going to be a jam-packed couple of days, but mainly games that we already know are coming, which I am actually completely fine with. Don't know if I can handle getting excited right now for other stuff, because like I've said, just go take a look at the list of launches in October specifically, and it's just nonstop of massive games that are coming out. All right, let's jump over here and talk about this article here. Pretty controversial, I would think. And this is coming from Naoki Yoshida, the producer of Final Fantasy 16. It comes out here and he says something in an interview that, according to IGN's translation of the interview on a Taiwanese YouTube channel, about platforms and gaming platforms. Right now, obviously, we are in a time where a lot of new games are coming out and there are major issues with them. They just aren't optimized properly. And we take a look at the most recent event, which is Baldur's Gate 3, where the developers admitted that they just didn't put enough resources towards optimizing the game for the Xbox Series S, which is why they are having trouble right now getting the split screen working on the Xbox Series S. So there's going to be a delay on the release date for Baldur's Gate 3 on Xbox. We take a look at Halo Infinite when it released. Split screen as well was the issue where they had to cut it completely out. I personally think that was because of the Xbox One, and promising that game to be on the Xbox One probably had a huge barrier for getting split screen running. Then we see Forza Motorsport coming out and saying split screen won't be available for multiplayer launch. So split screen seems to be a major issue right now, but that isn't the only issue. There are tons of bugs in newer games. Look at Jedi Survivor, which came out. Look at Redfall. All of these newer games that are coming out and having major problems across the board, where if you do buy a game day one, you're waiting a couple of weeks before you get the best version of it. You're waiting for a patch, and I think that's just completely unfortunate. Games should be coming out in a playable state where your experience, there may be bugs here and there, but it's not going to actually hurt your experience and ruin your experience, which a lot of these games are now getting when they release. And one of the problems that some developers say is that because there are so many platforms to optimize for, you got the SX, the PS5, potentially the PS5 Pro in the future, and then PC and all of the different specs there. And Yoshida says this: game platforms. I probably shouldn't say this, but I wish there was only one. It will be better for both the developers and the players. I think that's a pretty controversial statement. I don't know how many people would agree with it. I'm sure some developers would agree with it, but in terms of it being better for the players, I don't think so whatsoever, because you would have one platform holder in there being able to control everything, and there would be absolutely no competition. There would be no advancement in the technology for these platforms, because it would just be one, and they would make it so that it's a platform that's easy to develop for games to get pushed out as fast as possible and for as much money to be made. So I don't think that makes any sense, but I guess from a developer standpoint, knowing that you can only develop for one platform probably would take away a lot of the pain that developers are going through right now with all of the SKUs out there. And it's also an interesting take, because we all know Final Fantasy 16 launched exclusively on the PlayStation 5. Timed exclusive, it will be coming to PC, but in terms of consoles, we don't know if that will be coming over to Xbox. So it's essentially saying here, that's one of the reasons maybe why they signed the exclusivity deal, so they didn't have to think about all of the other platforms for this game when they were developing for it, at least at the launch on day one. But in the future, that won't happen. We will have multiple platforms, which I think will always be a good thing. Competition is always better than having just one platform holder to control everything. I'm sure there are platform holders out there, PlayStation probably, that would love that to be the way of the future, where everybody is only playing on a PlayStation console. All right, jumping over here, we do have an announcement for another big MMO coming over to Xbox as well as to PlayStation 5, and that is DC Universe Online. It will be coming over to both the Series X, S, and the PlayStation 5 this holiday with performance gains that will be found playing natively on the newest generation of the consoles. And they're also working on gameplay and quality of life improvements to go ahead with the performance gain. So that's just another MMO, DC Universe Online, coming over to the Xbox console. And it really gets you start to think about the Xbox in specifically turning into one of those consoles that is a home for major MMOs. You have the Phantasy Star Online 2, you have DC Universe Online, you have Final Fantasy 14 coming over now, and it would be all topped off if Xbox, after the Activision Blizzard deal closes, brings over a console version of World of Warcraft. I think that would be an awesome move, and I think there's definitely ways to adapt the game to controller. We've also seen the new implementation of being able to bind keyboard keys to your Xbox controller to specific buttons. So that'll definitely help, I think, going forward with bringing over a game like World of Warcraft to the platform. But DC Universe Online, keep your eye out for that if you do want to play it on the Xbox consoles. And finally, we have this. Xbox is introducing a brand new enforcement strike system. So if you're somebody out there who gets a lot of strikes against your account, you're sitting there wondering why you got struck, all of that type of stuff, you're now going to be able to see all of the information on what is going on with your account. They introduced this new system that will provide players with 8 chances before they get kicked off of Xbox for 365 days. 1 year. So 8 chances. There will be suspensions in between that within those 8 strikes, but the biggest one of all obviously is going to be the 8th strike where you're off for a year. Now, they give an entire enforcement stacking user journey map here as to what you can expect and how this entire thing works. You can see here, you start off with 0 strikes. Then if you get 1, that's your first suspension, is your gamer tag gets reported, and then you are going to be getting a 1-day suspension after 1 strike. The second strike gives you a 1-day suspension as well. Third strike gives you a 3-day suspension. The fourth gives you a 7-day, 5, 14 days, 6 strike, 21 days, 7 days, 7th strike, 60 days, and then the 8th strike, 365 days. So you have many chances here to screw up multiple times before you're off the platform for an entire year. So, I mean, keep that in mind. If you are getting strikes, go through and see what it is about. There are going to be examples for like profanity, cheating, sexually inappropriate, harassment or bullying, and hate speech. Those are all things that have points, I guess, assigned to them. And there will be a difference in what all of these points mean. It says here that you get like a +1 for profanity, going all the way down to +3 for hate speech. So that's how all this is work. I guess there is more severity depending on what you actually do within the enforcement and in this entire user journey. It's a new platform, and they also give you a breakdown of the visual look as to how you can see what's going on with your account, how many strikes you have, what you got struck for, when it happened, and all the type of stuff going on with it. So we will see how this works. The biggest question I have is, will this be abused, and how are they actually going to be enforcing it? Because there's definitely times people get reported for absolutely no reason, and it can be definitely abused. One thing they do say here, which I do think is a good thing, is as always, when a player believes they have witnessed a violation of Xbox's community standard, we encourage them to report it. All reports are evaluated. There are no automated enforcement actions based solely on the fact that a report was made. No volume of inaccurate reports results in an enforcement. Only reports that have been reviewed by the Xbox safety team and determined to be accurate result in an enforcement. So at least it isn't automated. There will be actually humans looking at these things, and they say here it doesn't matter how many times you report somebody. If it is a false report, nothing is going to happen. I wonder how they look at it. Is it recorded? Is their voice recorded? All of that type of stuff. Like, how do they know what somebody actually says? Because you can make up crazy stories if you just want to get somebody struck off of the platform or whatever it is. So that'll be interesting to see how this works going forward, and if this actually reduces the amount of people getting strikes on the Xbox platform. But I will leave the video there, guys. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.